This video is going to be a little bit more about a technique versus the actual stain color. I mean, it's going to have an aqua, blue, or cyan stain color to it. Um, I do three types of wood on this one. I do a birch, a curly maple, and that pine with a light burn. Um, so what I mean by the technique is sometimes you end up with a color that you may be trying to hit, and if you end up adding another drop of the concentrate to it, it's going to end up shifting it way too far from where you want it to be. So here I'm taking 15 drops of the blue and then 3 drops of the yellow concentrate. So now if I were to add a fourth drop of that yellow concentrate, it's going to shift it more towards the green instead of, the color between the blue and the green. I hope that makes sense to y'all. But what I did was I took 1 drop of the yellow concentrate and I added a tablespoon of the lacquer thinner to that, and then I added 2 ounces of the lacquer thinner to the blue yellow mix. So what I guess I'm trying to say is that if you end up diluting the yellow and then adding that to your mix, it's not going to have such a heavy impact as the concentrate itself. I take 1/8 and 1/4 teaspoon of the diluted yellow, and then I add that to this 2 ounce mix of the blue and the yellow, which will end up helping shift it towards the green spectrum, but not so far that it is green. If that makes sense. Anyways, the 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 first pass on this, I don't know. The file was corrupted. I'm not exactly sure how that happens, why it happens, other than you know just me having to do that over. So I sanded that back, and I'm gonna apply the second pass on here, which isn't gonna really affect the coloring too much, other than having a darker coloring into those grains that when I sanded it back, that the dye stain still remained inside those deeper grains. This is the birch. It's a plywood birch that I'm working on, and you'll see that it ends up going a little bit darker than what the curly maple does. So if you're trying to hit this type of color on a birch, you may want to go with a little bit more of the lacquer thinner. Like it's a basically a 5-to-1 ratio for the concentrates. So you could end up adding instead of the 2 ounces, that you could say, maybe go 3 ounces or 2.5 ounces. You just have to kind of play with it a little bit because each wood's going to be a little bit different. This is the pine. I do a little light burn on there to end up darkening the grains, and then I apply the stain over, the wood surface. And when I do this piece, I actually end up putting a second coat on it. And when I first ended up hitting it with the sealer, I was kind of disappointed because I wanted it to have like that aqua blue or cyan look to it. As you can see there, now if I would have just hit that with the sealer, I think it would have been pretty close to what that curly maple ended up turning out as. But instead, I ended up deciding, well, I'm going to go with a second coat just to see what happens. And when I hit it with the sealer, at first I was a little bit disappointed, but then after I ended up seeing the results, I thought it's a pretty nice color. And it ends up reminding me of like Scooby Doo. So I guess it was like Bob Ross would say, it's a happy accident. But yeah, so that's the second coat on the pine, and it still looks nice. And you'll see when it's sealed up that it ends up having a nice kind of coloring to it. It's got like the blues and greens kind of mixed in together for it. So it turned out pretty good. I prepped these woods with 150 sand, excuse me, a 150 grit sand, and then a 180 grit sand. The lacquer I'm using again is just a Minwax lacquer gloss, and that's my lacquer between coat sponge sander. For those that saw my table restoration video, you're gonna understand why I write on those sponges now on which seal coat that I'm working with. Yeah, it caused a lot of problems with the restoration table, but it ended up working out. that is the birch. Like I said, it went a little bit darker. It's still a cool color. Um, as far as in person, I think it's a little brighter. There's a there's a polarizing lens that's on this camera, and why I do that is because if it gets too bright, it ends up distorting the look. Uh, Again, I hope that kind of makes sense to you. Like when, especially when you're hitting the light and it's reflecting back to the camera, tends to end up doing some strange stuff to it. But maybe I'll try to take the lens off of it. But it's pretty close to the actual color that that I've seen in real time. But see what I mean? That kind of looks like a Scooby Doo color from like the old Halloween videos or cartoons or whatever. I mean, so like I said, it turned out pretty decent. This is that curly maple. It's again in person, I think it's a little bit brighter, but it's a pretty good representation of what I saw in real time. And it's a cool color, but I hope the technique ends up helping you out. That's gonna work with both the powders and the liquids. So it's just another option that you can have to end up trying to get to some of those in between colors if you're adding another drop of concentrate and it shifts it too far. This is an option that you can have. So I hope it helped out. Thanks you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. See you later.